Right now, though, Joel Hodgeson, J. Elvis Weinstein, and Trace Beulieu from Cinematic Titanic. You remember them also from Mystery Science Theater. They're all here in the studio. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hello.
What these guys do, for those who don't know, you got a robot, you got two robots, and you got a spaceman. And they've been launched into space, and they're forced to watch bad movies. And you've probably seen it, even if you've never heard of it. You flip them by the channels, and you see these three silhouettes in front of a bad movie just heckling it. And it's beautiful, and they're going to do it live.
Good summary.
Wow.
Excellent summary. That's how I'd say it, too. We do it live now as grown-ups. We just stand there and riff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no puppets, and frankly, we're not that beautiful anymore.
Yeah,
but.
so we're not going to see the servo or the crow puppet guys.
People
it's going to be
bring
you guys.
them occasionally. Yeah. You know, there's kind of a black market.
You mean you have weird fans?
Yeah, yeah. They make them. They traffic. If you go on eBay, they traffic in parts of. You know, you can get crow's bowling pin.
Yeah, okay.
And you can buy that and make your own crow. There's really a lot of them.
And Cinematic Titanic has a DVD that has just been released?
That's right.
We do.
Yeah.
CinematicTitanic.com for all your Cinematic Titanic needs.
The new movie is Doomsday Machine.
And where did this movie come from? Who's responsible for this?
The crap ether.
These are bad
It's
movies.
actually several movies cut together. We realized once we started riffing on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's parts from a Japanese movie. There's one rocket ship, but it's actually represented by about 6 different rockets in 6 different movies. So they finally, about midway through the movie, they settled on one rocket that would work. But really, you see like 6 rockets, different ones.
They're trying to pass it off as the same rocket.
Yeah.
It's a movie that someone started and just kind of walked away from, left it on the workbench, and then a couple of years later, someone came and saw these parts and went, I could finish this. Yes.
How did this start? How old were you?
Man.
And how old?
I was in my 30s.
And why Minnesota or something? We
were all in Minnesota. We were all doing stand-up.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually, the three of us were in a writing group together. This is the kind of thing that happens in Minnesota. Comics getting together in the morning to write comedy at the library.
In Minnesota.
Yeah.
Now, what was your opinion of Hollywood people in those, like, we can be funny in those Hollywood jerks?
We wanted to be them.
Or you get to a point in the move to Hollywood.
It wasn't even I don't think it was on my mind at all. I just think, I had left L.A., and came back, and I said, I think I could do a show that's kind of like a monster movie show where there's a movie and there's a host, and then I kind of had this vague idea of, there'd be it's like watching movies with companions. And the guy would be watching, and a robot would come in and bring popcorn, and they'd say a few things. It wasn't like it became. And really, it was because of these guys being in the room and us just having a lot of time to fill that we kind of invented movie riffing and kind of said, we could fill this with lots and lots of remarks. So.
Right.
And how did you do them technically? Like, that must have been prehistoric.
It was really prehistoric. We would go in on Thursday afternoon, pick a movie from the bottom section of their movie library at the station. Watch about 10 minutes, go, yeah, that's good enough. And then the next morning, we'd come in, we'd write up a couple of very quick host segments in about a half hour, and then we'd go in and shoot those host segments before lunch. And then we'd literally, when we came back from lunch, we'd build the show and online it as we were shooting it. So we'd take one of those host segments, then we'd film a movie segment, then they'd edit in the next host segment, and we'd film a movie segment. And so by the time we were done at 5, the show was in the can, and the wrestling show came in after us.
Minnesota wrestling after that.
That's right.
At what point does it go from there, from a local UHF station to...
Well, that was really weird. There's this guy, Roger Nygaard. Hi, Roger. And he was this guy who I happened to who I'd met in Minneapolis, who was out here, and he just called one day and he said, "Oh, I heard about this show. You know, they're starting this thing called Comedy Channel. You should call them." And so we cut together 4 minutes of the best stuff and just brought it to them. And I knew the guy who was running the channel, and so we brought it to them, and they liked it, and they really needed stuff.
And it looked cheap, looked inexpensive probably.
Really
they were like dollar signs in their eyes.
Yeah,
these guys from Minnesota.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And they're cheap movies. I think we got something here.
Yeah.
We can fill up 2 hours.
A 2-hour
it's a miracle.
puppet show for tens and tens of dollars.
Yeah, so that's how it happened. And then they were so busy just getting the channel on its feet that they were running our show like late at night, and it was just kind of this stopgap show that they'd put all over their schedule, and then people started to like it.
And you were pretty good about staying connected with your fans, it seemed like. It seemed like that was a big deal.
That was a huge thing.
That's nothing today with the internet, but back then that was a lot of work, I imagine.
It was a huge thing because for some reason they didn't really promote us, and so we had to come up with things to promote ourselves. So we started this thing called Keep Circulating the Tapes.
Yeah, yes.
Because it was in these pockets all over the country, but it wasn't like nationwide, and so people started taping it, sending it to people, and so we had to do things like that so they'd kind of could help. The people who liked us could promote us, and that still goes on today. The Mystery Science Theater fans are really organized, and they're really involved with what we're doing now.
But today we call it piracy.
Yeah, exactly. Now, speaking of piracy, I do a legal show here every Friday at 9, and this brings up a question which I know someone's going to ask today, and they're going to say, Joe, what they're doing at Mystery Science Theater and Cinematic Titanic is creating a derivative work. They're taking a copyright and they're adding their own stuff, and then they're exhibiting it. How do they get away with that?
Well, there's two ways to do it. One is to just go and license the film from the rights holder, which we do on some of the movies, and other movies are considered public domain. Yeah. And they didn't apply for their copyright.
Right, like Plan 9 from Outer Space ends up being owned by like that guy Wade, what's his name, in Kansas.
You have to kind of look for them. But fortunately, the heart of it is bad movies, and those are the movies that are orphaned, that people go, I can't make any money with this. I'm not going to apply for a copyright on it. What's the point? Yeah. So it works out.
Yeah, it does. Plan 9 from Outer Space. People call that the worst movie ever made. But you probably have your own idea what the worst movie was ever made was.
They say that Manos, The Hands of Fate is now the worst movie ever made, which is a movie we did on Mystery Science Theater.
Hands of Fate.
I think it's officially the worst movie ever made.
And you know what? I'm going to talk to Buzz Aldrin because I asked him, he was on the show a couple weeks ago, I asked him if he liked Plan 9 from Outer Space, and he just dead air.
And usually Buzz is so hilarious.
I know. Up till then, he was zinger after zinger.
I'm sorry, I can't entertain you with my wry perspective on your pop culture movie, young man.
And why don't you guys go over your characters, Joel? You're Joel Robinson in the original, and then we'll go over like what happens today.
Right, exactly. I was the guy who was shot into space. Supposedly, it was a big accident, and I used parts from the spaceship to make robots. And that was Josh, who was Tom Servo, and Trace, who was Crow. And Josh also did Gypsy when we started out, so he actually had his hands full with lots of
two-fisted puppeteering at the time.
And Trace, so you're a Crow.
Yes, I was the Crow 1 as Josh was Servo 1.
Some things are just coming to me. I've always wanted to ask you guys. Silent Running, that movie, Bruce Stern movie. Is that a kind of an influence on your thing?
Very good call. Yeah, I saw that in college, and I just loved it because it was a space movie, but it was done in like the early 70s, so it had a real hippie element to it.
Yeah, had all the ecology.
Yeah, it was great.
You don't hear the word ecology these days, but that was like the ecology
space movie. It was really cool, and he had 3 robots, so I totally based it on that.
Okay. Oh. That just came to me. So.
Yeah, originally...
Well played.
I don't know. You know, Joel and I have the same love for like Steve Martin, and I saw Joel on many talk shows with his Danny O'Danny two-headed ventriloquist thing, and I was just, who is this guy? And I just thought he was the greatest. And then when you came up with this, I've just tried to follow you. And it's such an honor to have you and your 2 dudes here on the show.
Thank you so much.
Are you guys? You guys probably hate him by now, but I still think he's cool.
No, we've cycled around to liking him again.
Yeah,
that works.
You gotta like a guy that keeps you employed for 20 years.
That's true. That is true. So Cinematic Titanic tomorrow. You can get the DVDs at cinematictitanic.com if you can't see the thing live tomorrow at the John Anson Ford Theater. Anything else we haven't covered, guys?
No, I think you got it.
Once you got the silent running thing.
Yeah, I think, where are you going to go with that?
We're friends for life now.
All right,
guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And I know you live in L.A., Joel.
Yeah.
Me
Josh,
too.
you live in L.A. also? Trace?
I moved back to Minnesota.
Never sell out, Trace. Good. I love that.
Oh, I missed it.
Cinematic Titanic, Mystery Science Theater. We'll have you guys again anytime. You're always welcome
you.
here. 7:36 on Indie.